This book, our Constitution, protects our society and empowers us to govern. The Protea leaves are us, the people, who freely elect our voices in Parliament. The drum calls the people of Parliament, through whom we govern together. And the sun is our country, healing our past, improving our lives, and energizing our potential. Together, our Constitution, our people, our Parliament, and our country are building our great South African nation. Parliament TV, channel 408 on DSTV.
Dumelang, welcome to Parliament TV on DSTV channel 408 and Parliament YouTube channel, coming to you live from Parliament TV studio on the Parliamentary Precinct in Cape Town. Now remember to join the conversation on our social media platforms at Parliament of RSA and let us know what you think about the work of Parliament right here on Parliament TV, DSTV channel 408. It is, after all, your Parliament, your voice, your future. Now, and today's focus is on the Portfolio Committee on Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs. Now, this committee is chaired by Dr. Zweli Mkhize and is a leading joint oversight visit with the Standing Committee on Public Accounts and the Standing Committee on the Auditor-General. Of course, the Standing Committee on Public Accounts is chaired by Mr. Songezo Zibi, and the Standing Committee on the Auditor-General is chaired by Mr. Wouter Wessels. Now, after starting in the Free State in June, the delegation now heads to the North West and Gauteng, working with provincial legislatures to restore governance, ensure accountability, and hold municipal leaders to account. Now, this follows the Auditor-General's warning that South Africa's municipalities are in dire straits. Now, of course, this is on the back of the 2023-24 local government audit that revealed failing service delivery, poor financial management, weak governance, and widespread instability, with only 16% of municipalities receiving a clean audit. Now, despite repeated calls, responses from Parliament, legislatures, ministers, and, of course, premiers have been too slow, leaving little change in the daily lives of citizens. Now, joining me in studio is Dr. Zweli Mkhize, the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, and a central voice in this joint push for municipal accountability. Doc, thank you so much for making the time to join us right here on Parliament TV.
Thank you very much, Sepo, and to all the viewers.
Thank you. Now, Chair, let's jump straight into it, and let's begin with the why. What prompted this joint oversight approach, and why is it happening only now?
Well, I think it will be recalled that the Auditor-General of South Africa came to Parliament to present the latest findings, and of course various committees, including the Portfolio Committee on COGTA, the Standing Committee on Public Accounts, as well as the Standing Committee on the Auditor-General. And out of this, a number of irregularities and weaknesses were identified. But the last point the Auditor-General made is that the results I'm giving you now are the same as last year. There are instances of deterioration, and there's a concern that if there's no intervention, the situation may deteriorate to a point where government may not be able to account for public resources that are entrusted in their care for service delivery. And that means if you cannot properly account, therefore we cannot even expect you to provide the services for which those resources have been allocated. And therefore ask the question, what will you do? Because Parliament is the last point of call. Now, out of this discussion, we as a portfolio committee on COGTA therefore felt we needed to change the approach. And the approach was going to mean that we visit the province, but we then need to activate the entire chain of government. Therefore, national, provincial, and local should be in one space discussing the issues together, and therefore draw one line to say everyone needs to be focusing on these particular issues, so that it shouldn't help us if the Auditor-General comes back 1 year later to tell us things that we already knew, but we cannot show what action has been taken on to correct those situations. And therefore, the Auditor-General went to speak to talk to the Speaker, and the Speaker then convened a meeting through the House Committee, and said, look, what do you do as Parliament? And so we then had a joint committee where we agreed with the three chairs of the committees that we should actually take all the information available to go and sit with all these municipalities. Now, in consideration of what we call intergovernmental relations and cooperative governance, we had to do this as national parliament in partnership with the provincial legislature, which is where the provincial government is supposed to account. Now, what we're then doing is we're creating one platform for accountability for all.
Yes.
Because we will then have the national government, national parliament, provincial legislature, and the municipalities all in one room, all talking about the problems. And in this, there's a role that the provincial government has to play.
Yes.
In this case, the Premier, as well as the MECs, have a responsibility to support. In terms of Section 154, they're supposed to support the municipalities. But if the municipalities do not respond properly to the support, then there has to be intervention, which is guided by Section 139. And we were arguing that show us where you have supported the municipalities, so that when we blame them for not having behaved, we must know you have done your bit. Now, on the other hand, the Speaker of the legislature needs to ask the question, when the municipalities were not accounting properly, what did the executive do to report to the provincial government, provincial legislature, so that decisions have to be taken at that level in line with the lines of accountability.
Yeah.
So this is how it came about. So we've therefore identified the Free State as the one of the worst performing municipalities, and we have conducted this oversight visit. I must say it's actually been quite an interesting learning exercise. Firstly, these committees have never really done a joint oversight. But what we found was important is that some information is available to the COGTA portfolio committee, some is available on SCOPA, some is available on the Auditor-General Standing Committee. But once we are all together, we are able to throw all this information and ask for responses at the same time. Then you've got almost a 360 degrees, because in the process, we then involve Treasury, both at national and provincial level, COGTA, and the Auditor-General. So by the time we got to the municipality, we have asked them, here are the issues identified by the Auditor-General. We want the provincial premier, the MECs, the mayor, the speaker, the municipal manager to answer the same questions. What went wrong?
Yes.
How did this situation get to where it is now? What have you done to correct it? Have you investigated as to what was the cause, and in which case, what consequence management has been effected here? And how do you prevent it going to the future? And in the event in future, what you say will be the corrective measures. In the event that it is transgressed again, what will you do? Yeah. So everyone is answering the same questions.
Now, with that, Chair, of course, I appreciate the fact that this is a You said a 360 degree in terms of strengthening accountability, and that collaboration allows that in terms of the municipalities, in terms of provincial government as well. Now, of course, the 2023-24 audit outcomes, as you said earlier, they paint a bleak picture. We're talking late reports, unfunded budgets, disclaimers, financial irregularities, and as mentioned earlier, only 16% of municipalities receiving a clean audit. Now, Chair, with that, from Parliament's perspective, what is most concerning here with regards to issues of service delivery, lack of ensuring that people get what they need, specifically when they need it?
The real issue is that the test of the effectiveness of a local municipality is services to the people, basic issues. Can people get water? Do they get water, clean, safe water, regularly as they need it? Do you have adequate sanitation so that it keeps the dignity of our people and prevent diseases? Do we have good roads, or have we fixed the potholes? Yes. Do we have a clean environment with the streets being clean and refuse being collected and grass being cut to keep people safe from vermin that would actually cause diseases? Do people have adequate lighting in terms of electricity so that they can cook in their homes and that they can run their household without any challenges? Do you have a program to assist the communities with employment opportunities, because the government can go so far, but beyond that people must work and earn their own living? Do you have adequate support for those who are unemployable because of old age and disability, so that there is indigent grant that is made available for the community to get support and get the basic services? And there is infrastructure funding, which is important for delivering the services, water, electricity, roads, and all of this. Now, to do all that, you need a very tight administrative machinery inside government, which means, therefore, you must have the administration, which must have the relevant skills with fully employed and the vacancies fully filled, and also the financial management services should be available. And then linked to that is a whole working of government, governance governance in the municipality. Do you have meetings regularly? Do you take decisions timeously? Do you do the approvals that you need? Because it's a very simple issue. If the municipality the council does not hold meetings and they don't take decisions, you will actually end up being unable to resolve problems that people are experiencing simply because you didn't take the decisions on time. So all of these have to be looked at. Now, there's been a report about the dysfunctionality of municipalities, which takes us back as many years of how this has been the case. Now, the minister has indicated that there's some intervention to improve governance and to reduce dysfunctionality, to improve financial management, and therefore to curb irregularities, corruption, and recklessness in the use of funding. So when the Auditor-General goes into the municipality, they come back with an answer that tells us if all of these things that I've mentioned are being attended to. And therefore, for us, Auditor-General is like an inspector who will come in and say, this is not being done properly, and therefore something needs to be done. Now, one of the things that has really been a shocking issue for us has been the fact that there are many municipalities which are not showing an improvement, and there are those that are showing deterioration. Now, at this point, you have got municipalities that have had this for the past 5 years, 8 years. Disclaimer means the Auditor-General came to request documents to show you were given a budget. How did you spend the money? Where are the records? Where did you plan for it? Where are the plans? Did you monitor that it was properly being, implemented so that you paid as there was progress? You don't have those records. Then the Auditor-General says, well, I cannot even express an opinion. The paperwork is so bad that I can't. Now we're saying we cannot continue to have that. So in the North West, as we're going to be visiting,
yes.
they'll have 3 of those municipalities that have been serial offenders. Now we are saying you cannot have the same municipality getting a disclaimer for so many years and there's no change. You cannot have a municipality that is reported not to have submitted annual financial statements every year and there's no action on that. You cannot have a municipality that brings incomplete documentation and then the Auditor-General has to go and rework the financial statements and come back and say confirm this, confirm this. Once it's done, then only then they can start auditing. Because you've got a municipality that has got the authority, the power, the skills and the responsibility to provide these records.
Yes.
But now someone else has to do it for them, and worst of all, the Auditor-General. So we have then said, this approach we're taking, we want the municipality to give us an undertaking. All the things that have been identified as being wrong by the Auditor-General, you must commit now that you are going to solve them all. Secondly, we want to ensure that you no longer are going to have disclaimers. You're no longer going to have a situation where there are municipalities that do not supply the annual financial statements. Actually, when you look at it, you don't think it's a problem of ability. It's a problem of unwillingness. Because, you know, a simple basic matter, you're given money, where did you record it? You spent money, where did you record it? Give us those papers. Now, if you can't give us, what do you mean? You understand? So that's how we're approaching this matter.
Yes.
And we've therefore said when they show, the municipalities show that there are things that they hadn't done, we leave them there and we go to the next authority. MEC, your job is to monitor. Premier, your job is to monitor. When they didn't do what they were supposed to have done, what did you do? Now, if there was no action on those municipalities, what action must be taken on you?
And Chairperson, of course, you're talking about consequence management
Exactly.
now in this regard. And of course, earlier you mentioned that the committee, the joint committee as it is, we're talking about COGTA, we're talking about COPA and the Standing Committee on the Auditor-General, that you went on oversight in the Free State.
Yes.
There was a lot of interest in that regard. And earlier on, we were speaking off camera that the reason why people are interested is because we don't understand how close to the heart municipalities are when it comes to service delivery for the people. Now, on your joint oversight program, what were the biggest red flags that the committee encountered there, and what lessons are you then taking forward as you go on oversight in Gauteng and North West?
Well, the first red flag is that there are huge deficiencies in service delivery. In water, this is a problem literally everywhere. The issue of whether people have access to water, in some instances, communities don't have water for several days. And the worst part is it's not always explained to people what the problem is. And so people may understand if there's a technical problem, but please explain.
Yes.
And there's not enough explanation. Then you've got a deterioration on the sewerage, where the management of the water treatment plant and wastewater treatment plant is ineffective. But we look at the expenditure and find that even that expenditure pattern is not acceptable, in the sense that maybe in some instances money has been returned, in some instances not been spent according to the, look, if you have spent half a year with this budget, you should have at least spent half of that budget. Yes. But if there's a mismatch there, it tells us that we are not spending properly. And so we have to now ask, why is that the case?
Yeah.
So we've got challenges of roads, you know, deterioration of roads with potholes. These are simple things that people get very, very inconvenienced by. The issues of refuse removal, place gets dirty,
yes.
people dump everywhere, and you then see rats running around, and you know they're coming with diseases. You know, grass is not cut. You know, it just looks very wild and
Yes.
it's a city. You know, these were the issues that we were all very concerned about as we were talking to the municipalities. Of course, the major issue then becomes that of unemployment. Poverty is huge. People are hardly coping, and this for us is a problem. And we're saying, you've got some resources, do your best so that you can help people, and then we can then move it from there. Some of the instances, you'll have an indigent register that registers fewer people, but the budget is higher that has been claimed for the indigent. And so we're saying, okay, and then what do you do with the rest of the money?
Yes.
You know, because we can count now how many people are being assisted, but we can see that it doesn't match what has been paid from national government. So having looked at this, when you go into the machinery, then you realize that a number of issues there. In the first instance, there are instances of people where there are vacancies of senior people. If you don't have engineers or an engineering section with appropriate skills, then you're not going to spend money on infrastructure.
Of course.
If you don't have a proper financial chief financial officer, you're going to have problems accounting for the money. You're going to have problems spending the money. And so we're asking them, why haven't you employed people?
Yes.
And then we go into the operations of the municipality. Then we see there are a lot of tensions, instability, the fights at the top. Mayor and the speaker are not in good terms, and so they keep fighting. So the working of the municipality is affected. The mayor and the municipal manager disagree. Sometimes they feel they're being given wrong instructions, and then of course there are tensions there. And then you get instances where the instructions are making people do wrong things, where you got maybe a councillor or a mayor who would tell people who they must pay at the end of the month and all of that. And so you get those kinds of challenges. Then you've got unaccounted processes, you know, management of contracts, not adequate. The award of contracts has got question marks. The value for money has got question marks, and therefore you need to have a proper investigation. Investigations don't get done. Sometimes the investigations are done, but the reports don't get tabled. And therefore you can't act on those. So all of these are issues that when we sit and look through, we probe into each and every one of them. And our demand is, okay, go and solve it. And also please ensure that there's consequences. So having spoken to them on each and every municipality, we've given out specifics. All the issues were raised by Auditor-General and must be resolved. All the issues that were raised by the committees must be resolved. All the issues of vacancies must be solved. All the structures that lead to the accounting process to clean up unauthorized expenditure, irregular expenditure must be put in place. Disciplinary structures must be put in place. And in 3 months, this is now from Free State, you're going to give us a report on each of these, how far you are. We'll receive that report. Don't worry, we'll come back on the next 3 months again.
I guess they learned the hard way that we are special is not an answer that you give to, Parliament.
Oh, no.
So with that, Chair, let's jump to financial management, right? I mean, we've spoken about the Free State, and we know that they have one metro municipality, that is Mangaung, and then you have your local and district municipalities. You have Machabeng, you have Nala, which are in dire constraints, just like the Auditor-General said. Now, many councils continue to adopt unfunded budgets despite Treasury's warnings. How do municipalities then, especially during your engagements, justify approving budgets that they know are unsustainable?
Now, it's a much bigger problem, actually. In the first instance, it goes to the question of the structure of their financial management system. Do they have it? Do they have the relevant skills? Then in the process, you realize that the management of their debtors and creditors is a problem. It takes long to pay whoever they owe. They collect very little revenue of what they maybe have access to. As a result, they have a lot of unpaid debts to ESCOM, to water boards, and part of the restriction on availability of electricity and water has to do with the debts they owe to the supplying utility boards. Now, the huge debts mean that at any one time, if you collect less, you will always have an unfunded budget, because what quite often happens is that they will then rely on the equitable share, which is the government grants, and then their own collections. But most of the time, you got two problems there. There are some which are very, very poor, like Harib, for example. Yes. Very, very poor. They very rural, they've got small towns, they've got no serious rate space. Yes. So they're relying on government. For all intents and purposes, they're completely unviable. So that we have actually called for the ministers at national level to have a look at those and find a solution, because whatever you want to do, those municipalities can't cope. Yes. So there are several municipalities like that. Then you've got others that have got a rate base, but they are not managing their revenue collection properly. They're also not managing their debts and creditors, debtors and creditors properly. Yes. As a result, they don't collect from all those who owe them, and they don't also pay those whom they owe on time. And because of that, they end up having a huge bill, which even when they do the budget, they are not able to balance it, because the needs are much more than the available resources. So it lands up in an unfunded budget. Now we are saying they must correct that. They've got to work together. Yes. So they've got to embark on what we call a post-audit action plan to correct the wrong that the Auditor-General identified. Then they must have a financial recovery plan to show where they will get money outside national government grants. And they must show that. And in the process, they must also show they're managing all their creditors properly, and therefore they're able to settle some of the payments. You know, can you imagine that the municipality is not able to pay for the pension contribution, and they don't pay for medical aid contribution? As a result, some of the municipalities can no longer allow people to go on retirement because they've got a debt with the retirement funds. So we ask them, how do you deal with it? So they negotiate. They would say, okay, we'll take one person who's about to retire, go and negotiate what is the backlog, what are the arrears, pay fully those arrears, and then release the person. And then ask the other one to wait until next month when we are now able to pay for your arrears and then release you. Now, if we can't pay, then we must actually hold you without allowing you to go on retirement. Now, that's unacceptable.
It is.
So all of these things were saying that the provincial government must get involved in helping them to resolve those issues. The national government must do the same.
Now, with that, Chair, of course, when we speak about provinces like the Free State, you did mention that there are rural municipalities in that regard that face different challenges, right? Now, if we move into the Gauteng province, we're talking metros like Tshwane and Johannesburg, which are a growing concern of uncertainty of whether they may survive financially. What does this say about urban governance in South Africa's economic hub?
Well, this is one of the other challenges. If you looked at the metros, we found that probably one of them get a very clean audit. The others were struggling. Then we then asked the question, why should they struggle? Because they have the best of resources. Yes. They should be able to get the best human resource skills that they need. They should be able to raise their own revenue to the extent that is possible. Yes. So we believe a lot of it is mismanagement, and that needs to be attended to and get corrected. You cannot have a metro relying on consultants. Why are they relying on consultants? Because they can employ people with the relevant skills. Now, why should they have vacancies? Because they are a center of attraction. They should be able to attract people who want to work in urban centers. Yes. If you have a difficulty attracting a chartered accountant into a Mohokari municipality in the Drakensberg under the Lesotho mountain, you understand,
Yes.
but you cannot explain that in a metropolitan municipality. So we're going to be focusing on them as well to explain why they should be having this problem. We just think that the political management needs to be tightened with a proper political will, and for this we actually have to call on the political parties they must also rein in on the level of discipline and political will of those leaders who are deployed as councillors, as mayors, as speakers, so that they can tighten up this issue. Issue of Auditor-General is not about a clerk that collects the financial statements. It is about the overall governance of the municipality, which the speaker, the mayor, must take responsibility, and the entire council must take responsibility. And we're saying not only they, even the provincial premier, MECs and the executive and the legislature must take responsibility for the performance of the municipalities. That's why we're doing it joint. And we're saying everyone who needs to answer is here. Let's get all the answers.
Now, Chair, you've covered service delivery failures, and you've covered what it means, especially when municipalities are getting, for example, 0% of its service delivery targets last year, just like the Ramotsheri in the North West. That's a municipality there. It got a 0% in terms of their target, right? Now, with that, when we talk about corruption and mismanagement, most of these provinces, as you mentioned, show high levels of unauthorized, irregular, fruitless, and wasteful expenditure, and often with no consequence, right? Why is enforcement still missing, especially when local government or local municipalities are not working alone? You have a provincial legislature that is there to enforce consequence management. What is there that is misaligning?
Yeah, because you have various categories of expenditure that should not have been done. So if you spend money and you have got no authority to do it, we call it unauthorized. You have one which is irregular. It was done by the process through which this was done is not correct. Then you got a problem. Then you got fruitless, so the expenditure was incurred but there was no benefit, and then in some instances there was money was just wasted, it disappeared, and we don't know what has happened. So the processes are supposed to be, the municipality must have a public accounts committee, which is called MPAC, that must analyze each and every one of those amounts and then decide which ones were done but there might have been benefit and value, which ones were done but there were proper processes but we ended up circumstances beyond what the municipal officials could control. They resulted in the loss and so on. Then it helps, because then what you do at the end, you will decide that here we must write this one off and forget about it. Here we need to investigate, but look, it's just a minor transgression, so we'll discipline someone internally. It was negligence, it was this, so we'll discipline them internally. But this one is criminal, so it needs to be, now someone needs to be criminally charged. Now the MPAC, this committee, accounts committee, public accounts committee, must then separate all of that. Once that they've come with that recommendation, the municipality must take the report and then effect those. When they effect them, that gives you the disincentive to do wrong. Now we find that you find a municipality for the past 4 terms, 4 years, they've not investigated. In some instances they investigate, but they don't have the skill, so the reports are not effective. In some instances they investigate, they do the report, but the decisions are not being taken by the council. Now this is why we will then sit down and say, we want to know where things went wrong. Do you need to appoint the committees, disciplinary board, the MPACs? Do you have internal audit committees? Do you have internal audit units, which must show us where the risks and the problems are, and for that for you to prevent future such future losses. So we focus on that, and when we are done, we want to make sure that there's a timeline by which those committees would have been set up, and then if the committees are there, we want to make sure that by timelines they've been given proper power and authority. If they do have that, by timelines the reports must have been considered, and action must be taken. So when they come to us, they will not only just report those things, they'll be telling us, in this is what we found, and this is the action we've taken. They'll report all these actions to the provincial legislature and to the national committees. Yeah.
Now, of course, Doc, there's conflict of interest, right? And in some cases, councillors or officials are linked to municipal contracts. I mean, we recently had a case in the news where it is alleged that a mayoral committee member in the Free State, in Machabeng specifically, had awarded himself a 15 million rand solar panel tender. Now, in that regard, what is the committee doing differently to root out this kind of practice? Because it's always been there. And it's almost become a norm to a point where people sort of defend their actions. So in this regard, what is the committee doing differently, and what recommendations are there to ensure that such things do not happen?
Well, the major issue now is management of contracts, and also the number of instances where the participation of councillors in tenders has been fingered as an issue that needs to be acted upon. There are instances where the municipal tender has been given to someone who is linked but not declared properly. So in those instances, we actually demand immediate investigation, and we will follow them up until we get the results, consequence management at that level.
And then, Chair, with regards to provincial and national intervention, then municipalities like Ditsobotla are under mandatory intervention. You did mention earlier that it's, I think you said section 139, correct, that the provincial legislature can have an intervention within municipalities if they deem it necessary. In that regard, do these interventions actually work? Because like the municipality that I mentioned, the progress still remains slow despite these interventions being made by the province.
The outcomes are varied. There are many instances where there were interventions and the municipality recovers. Okay. There are instances where there are serial interventions and there's no change. Now, when we look into it, we realize that in most of the instances, it's all about follow-up. It's all about monitoring. Yes. It's all about ensuring that there's appropriate staff being appointed and that the governance is restored. But there are instances where it makes no difference, and there are two areas where we've found that there are problems. In the one instance, these are municipalities where the level of poverty and access to resources is a problem. Okay. So it doesn't matter how well you want to manage it, they never are able to cope because they don't have additional resources. That's okay. One area. Then the other one is an instance where there is poor political will, where you find that the people are fighting, the councillors are fighting, they're not monitoring what's going on, but because they're fighting, sometimes some of them get involved in corruption, that they protect each other. Now, when you have to take action, you can't get the right decision because one group is this side, the other group is that side. Yeah. And that's when I say we then call on the parties that are governing that municipality to take responsibility, because when you can't get the council to take the right decision, you have to actually consider whether those people are fit to be members of the council. And that is a decision of a party that deploys them. So that is an issue that you can't run away from. You have to confront, to say, in some instances, the political party in charge has to make the call. And then, of course, beyond that, when we get to the issues on the side of governance, we would then ask the question, why haven't you acted on the mayor who actually didn't want to submit the report to council? Yeah. Why haven't you acted on a councillor who did not participate where he was supposed to participate. As a result, the committee didn't function. So those are some of the things. So you can't take a lot of decisions administratively, but you also need to make sure that you understand that there's a political angle to it, and both of them must show a commitment to resolving the problems.
Now, Chair, of course, earlier you mentioned that municipalities are spending millions on consultants, and it's something that the committee did not understand. Even during the probing, you did ask as to why the case may be. What is the report then with this regard, Chair? Is it a skill shortage, or is it just simply a lack of accountability?
It was actually interesting because they did a study to check how many municipalities were using consultants way back. They found that the number of municipalities that were using consultants that time has not really changed compared to what's happening now. Now, the consultants were brought in as a short-term measure to assist to build the skills and to close the gap when they needed, certain work to be done. But then as you go on, a permanent feature, and we're saying you've got these outcomes, audit outcomes, but you still have consultants. Why do you think you need them? Now, we are actually on each one municipality asking them, if you are using consultants, you must explain why you're using them, but you must show us the program of how you're going to phase them out, build your own internal capacity. It may not happen within one financial year, but you must show us clear timelines of how you're going to change that situation. We think building internal capacity is important, and in any case, we have seen that the outcomes aren't getting better with more consultant use.
And earlier on, we mentioned that in terms of compliance, some mayors, some municipal managers still miss deadlines. And in this regard, Chair, I think the viewers would like to know then that what real enforcement powers then does Parliament have, of course, in terms of in line with the committees and the committee's work. What real enforcement powers do we have, and what action can Parliament take to ensure that these kind of things do not happen?
Well, if there is a transgression, we expect that the council process must identify it, investigate, identify, and report to the criminal justice system. That the municipalities do. Now, if we think there are cases where this is missing and is brought to our attention, then we have to raise it with the provincial MEC and the Premier. And if they do not act, we raise it with the national minister to say they need to demand an explanation as to why that matter has not been reported. So our approach, therefore, is we will list issues up. The council must explain what happened on these cases. That's why you will see when the committee is sitting, they'll be asking about a particular case with a name, with all the specific. When we want the report, we want the names, we want the case numbers, we want to know the progress of the case, we want to know the outcome of the case, because that's how you hold everyone accountable. And if they do not act on that, we now have to then report that for the MEC and the Premier to say, if there was no action on this matter, you have to take it over yourself. And then in the process of taking it over, of course, if there's a problem, they now need to appeal to the higher sphere of government.
And now, Chair, with this collaboration between the Portfolio Committee that you chair, it's COGTA, the Standing Committee on Public Accounts, and the Standing Committee on the Auditor-General, with this collaboration, this new approach, how does the committee, and probably even all three committees, feel that it will ensure change is felt on the ground, that people on the ground that watch the oversight proceedings, that watch Parliament and its work, how will they feel that change?
It's actually very interesting. What we have asked the approach to be is that there must be full transparency. One, where we'll have space, the public will sit and watch the discussions. And we've been through these instances, and we realize that it actually helps the community to see that, in fact, the councils are being held accountable and they have to answer the question. We've opened it up on YouTube. We've opened it up on live
TV,
streaming, Parliament TV. What we had not anticipated is that people will actively engage us on that. So what you'll, for example, find, they would watch on TV a live response, And they say, no, 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 that answer can't be correct.
Ah.
And then they decide that they actually have information to share, to show that, in fact, the answer is not correct, and they send it.
Wow.
So we've had instances where we would sit in the meeting, people would listen to the answer from a councillor, a mayor, or a municipal manager,
Yes.
and then they send us a document to say, no, 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 that is the answer. That's what you've been told is not correct. We've actually had to confront many people with that information. And sometimes you respond to the document and you don't give us a correct answer, they give us a next document to prove that the second answer was not correct, because they are actively participating,
Yes.
which for us is the crux of the whole issue of public participation. Whatever we're doing for the public. We don't know what's happening. We get informed by the public.
Yes.
We don't know what public are unhappy about. They report their grievances. Now, our role as parliamentarians is to take those grievances and deal with the system. The executive must answer and go and correct those issues, and that's the feedback that we can give to our public, that when you raise the issue, we will raise it directly for you, because we are basically the mouthpiece of the public. And once we have done that, there must be a response. And that's how really democratic participation is supposed to be. Not that you wait for 5 years to vote, but that every other day you've got a mechanism through which you interact with the government to direct the resources, to direct the priorities, to direct grievances, to make sure that through the processes of electing public representatives, your matters can be can be escalated to the correct level for resolution. Yes. And we're trying to do that.
And this is, of course, living up to a parliament by the people, for the people.
For the people, exactly. And we're saying, if the democracy works very well, properly, then there would be no need to go burn barricades. There would be no need for people to go and break down the infrastructure they already have so that they can get what they don't have. Yes. They will actually have their answers right in front of them. And we are doing this now. We're doing this live, and we'll go and visit. But when we do the follow-up meeting, we'll do them on a virtual platform, and they'll also be open to the public.
And now, with that, Chair, of course, looking forward, where is the committee going to next? And how do you decide on which municipalities to prioritize?
Well, we just take a couple of factors to decide where are the largest numbers of most negative outcomes, and then we go from here to that. But at a certain point, you actually use convenience as an issue. But Free State and North West were the priority areas, so we're doing those first. Then after that, we're going to do Gauteng because of convenience, it's nearer. Then we'll also do Eastern Cape because of the call has been very high. I think after that, we'll do KwaZulu-Natal. And the issue really is to try and balance up in terms of available time and convenience and all of that. But we go by where we've been picking up issues that require more attention, and we're trying to do, right now, we're trying to reach as many municipalities. Whilst the Auditor-General is starting the audit process, we want to see whether by the time we're done, we will have been able to influence the change of culture that will ensure that the Auditor-General's results might be different. And we've seen that where there's been intervention of the provincial government, it actually supports municipalities and their changes. And so we're hoping that out of that process, things will improve. We believe it's very different. And for us, it's actually going to make a huge difference in terms of influencing the responsiveness of the municipalities to community concerns.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us here on Parliament TV, Doc.
Thank you very much.
And that was Dr. Zweli Mkhize, and he is the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs. And of course, Parliament TV will keep following this work because strong municipalities mean better lives for South Africans. Now, the proceedings will be live streamed on Parliament's YouTube channel, and you can also follow us on all of our social media platforms at Parliament of RSA. And like the doc said, be part of it and practice active citizenship. It is, of course, your parliament, your voice, your future. Now, from myself and the team behind the scenes, take care.